Good afternoon and welcome to the Tuesday, September 7th, 2010 City Council Informational Meeting. Welcome, and we'll call the meeting to order. First, we'll start off with a City Council staff report from Deborah A. Owen, City Clerk, Chief of Council Operations.
Thank you, and good afternoon, Sioux Falls City Council. Just an update, and I know there's been some emails, but I wanted to clarify a little bit about the change in how we conduct business in terms of our rules of order. As you know, with the ordinances, we always use the Roberts Rules of Order unless an ordinance conflicts with that. We've had some council discussions requesting that we would do the motion and the second after the administrating department would address the ordinance or resolution. In part, the request was by council because they don't know what they're putting a motion in a second to. There's been no discussion on it, so they're not sure they want to put the motion in a second out there. Is my microphone not on? Is that better? Okay. And wanted to hear about the subject matter before the motion in the second. So in addition, there's an ordinance also out there in subsection F of 2-16, which talks about no person except council members shall address the council after a motion has been made unless requested by a council member. And of course, council can always ask questions of those once you make the motion in a second. We want to be consistent and not have such a strict interpretation of our Roberts rules. And so that is why there will be a change if you so wish. Anyway, that was a request of council after council discussions, and that's the reason behind it. Any questions?
I have a question, Deborah. You say if council so wishes to do this, tell me more. Do we have to change anything or just start doing it that way? No,
you don't have to change anything. It was a strict interpretation of Robert's rules, and I don't know if Tamara wants to address any of this as well. To have that motion in a second prior to any discussion on the item. But, most governing bodies, and we had discussions with Michelle and Sue and perhaps others about allowing for a less strict interpretation, which would have the person who would be administering the document, usually that's the department for those who are listening, address that and speak to the legislation before council makes a motion in a second. And that's the only change.
Okay, well, Tamara, do you have anything to add?
No, I'll just say that when we have the items tonight, the procedure would be for the Assistant City Clerk to read the item, the Department Director to get up and speak on the item. The Mayor will ask for public input on an item except for first readings, which do not require public input. Then there can be a request for a motion, second to adopt, questions, comments from the Council, and then vote by roll call and announce the results and introduce the next item. And I can have copies of that at your desks tonight if you wish.
Does anybody have questions about just how we want to proceed, or, it's like the old way we used to do it, frankly, and then we kind of tried to change it into a new way of approving things, I believe, in the affirmative motion, but it's back to the old way. I think several of us here know how to do the old way, but it's some of the new counselors who have been practicing it. Do you have any questions about how, or concerns?
I guess I would just say that I was the chief whiner on this issue because it was uncomfortable for so many of us who have participated in other public meetings and meetings of various organizations that it seemed backward. And so I appreciate Tamara especially going after the information, doing the research for us, and making sure that we are following our own ordinance, which is sort of in counter to Robert's rules, but it is our ordinance. So I appreciate that, Tamara. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, Tamara. Any other questions of Deborah? Okay, I think we're good. We'll move on to Mayor Huther. Mayor, welcome. I think the Mayor has a brief budget follow-up that he'd like to cover with us.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it, Councilor Jameson and other councilors. First of all, I wanted to thank you. There's a couple topics I'd like to cover with you today. The first one, I wanted to thank you for meeting with me last week in the spirit of listening and learning, as well as me answering questions in regards to the Event Center CIP project item, in regards to the 2011 capital program. And today I've handed out another email to you, as well as we've got some documents for the public. And with your permission, we'd like to just kind of go through those very, very briefly. And then I have a follow-up presentation as well I'd like to do. Mark Cotter is actually going to present this one-page document to you, just like he did in the meetings that we held with you good folks. And it will be a brief presentation, and then I'll also have another brief one immediately following that.
Good afternoon, Mayor and City Council. Mark Cotter with the Office of Public Works. First of all, I did hand out the memo from the Mayor to yourselves, and it essentially lays out some of the key topics that we would normally talk about when we're planning, taking the initial steps to any capital facility throughout the city. This one particular is on the event center, and I do have a couple of slides that we'll go through, but I think one of the key things that we want to accomplish with the dollars that have been requested in the 2011 to 2015 capital plan at the end of the day is to get some very good detailed graphics of what this will ultimately look like and ultimately cost. And so those are our two key steps, and there are a number of key steps to reach that point. I will also tell you that one of the key topics is normally what's the size of the facility going to be? And I think it's very important to remember that based on the venue that you put in an event center, we'll adjust the seating or the ticket capacity for that particular event. One of the keys that we wanted to highlight is in that second paragraph, the minimum recommended seat capacity is for a basketball venue with 12,000 sellable seats. But again, it's important to know that as you change a facility like this for different venues, you will, based on the venue, you may have less or you may have more. The key is that's the baseline for the facility. It also shows that it has a preliminary project estimate of $99.5 million. And now I'll take you through some of the key aspects of what we'd like to accomplish. Okay, again, there's a significant amount of work that has to be done to look at the existing site, and then also take us through concept all the way through schematic design. And so those are the first steps. The key is also to not start over. It's to build upon what the two previous task force have done, and then just take that to a higher level of detail. And then the key is that this will be done by professionals that are experienced in this work. We've talked, we certainly know that there are very good architectural and engineering firms local, and so it would be our desire to require that the teams have a local architect along with a national architect, and we haven't decided on that percentage of work yet, but it likely will be somewhere between 15 and 25% of the work has to be done local. We know that at some point they've got to leverage that national expertise, and so the memo also highlights that as well. We'll be looking at qualifications, experience, and certainly availability. Okay, just a few key bullets of what we would put in an RFP for the consultant teams to not only strategize but then submit on, which would be conduct a site survey and review the existing infrastructure, and that looks at everything from the bones of the transportation system to the amount of power facilities that you can get to there and many other tasks in between. Also looks at public and private infrastructure as it relates to water, wastewater, communication, those items. We'd also do the geotechnical evaluation, which is essentially conducting soil borings in this part of our city. We have a substantial amount of quartzite rock, so we want to understand what the soil is above that shelf, but also where that shelf's actually at. So our soil borings will have that. Design. Well, actually, one of the key things is to develop up to 3 concept designs. And I think one of the things we want to do is after you have a good stakeholder group that creates 3 concept designs, develop a parking plan that supports those, and then go to the public. And as you know, whether it's a roadway project or a library expansion, we do a lot of public output. and we would take these 3 concept designs and really start to find out what the community wants, what they like and don't like, and then ultimately select a preferred alternative, refine that down to schematic design drawings, and then through new technology now with digital building information modeling, that's essentially we're able to fly through the facility. It is a great tool. Many people are using it not only just to avoid some of the construction conflicts, whether it's with electrical, HVAC, but you're really able to see how the facility looks on the inside and out and how it also changes by different venues. And so this is just fantastic technology that's really come to the industry in the last 6 to 8 years, and we've started to see it in even some of our public works projects. At this point, if we are comfortable with the level of schematic design, we can request the guaranteed maximum price because there's essentially 2 contracts that we would be selecting for. One would be architectural and engineering. The other would be construction management at risk, of which you just supported us on going forward with the zoo. And we just have received those RFPs very soon. And so the construction management at risk contract provides value engineering to the architects as they're refining the concepts and the schematics, but they're also the ones at the end of the day that have to provide that guaranteed maximum price. Then the funding strategies can be run. And then last, develop a reasonable final design and construction schedule. Some other key activities that will happen in parallel are to tour similar facilities. There's been tours that have been conducted already. Certainly that work was very good. If I would expect just with some of the recent facilities that have been built, based on the team that is selected, they may want us to go to some of theirs or another one that they would like us to see to really see what some of these facilities can do. Develop the financial portfolio and funding strategies, develop an economic impact analysis, and then, as we've talked, conduct the community vote. Okay, just a couple of points on schedule. We would expect that the site review and schematic design would take about 8 to 12 months, and then we've heard the typical construction range is 20 to 24 months, and so just to give you a perspective on what some of the initial design work would take, and then what the construction, and know once we get to that point, once we move beyond, you can actually do design and construction somewhat in parallel with this new construction management at risk approach. And I can answer any questions.
Mark, thank you. And again, City Council, again, I thank you for meeting with me as well as a couple of others within the city departments to talk about this. You asked good questions last week, and our intent before meeting with the public, or at least talking to the public, was to try to get a flavor from you if you had any specific questions that we could even add to this part of the presentation. We tried to do that here today. Mark, I thank you for taking the time to do this. Also fully aware that the City Council is going to talk about this more, and you should. And I respect you for that. With your permission, I'd like to talk a bit more about the budget process, if you don't mind, Councilor Jameson. Thank you. First of all, thanks for letting me have this opportunity to speak to you prior to voting on the budget. I know this is a little unusual to do this, but it has been a long process, and one that over the weeks, certainly things have come out that I wanted to have an opportunity to address you prior to you making your critical vote here in a week or two. And I wanted to start off with a quote, and that is, "The successful man will profit from his mistakes and try again in a different way." To the folks of Sioux Falls and to this City Council, this is my first rodeo when it comes to city government budgeting. I certainly have made mistakes, and I continue to learn from it. I do realize that. In business, for example, we build 5-year plans all the time. We do. But because they're so assumption-based later on in those years, and things change so rapidly, we normally don't dwell on some of those outlying years. In the city council discussions that we've had, there's been some discussion on those outlying years, and I certainly respect that. I truly do. But in the spirit of just where I was coming from, and along with the city department heads, we were so focused on the 2011 budget because that is the budget that is truly what you're voting on, and that ultimately you will fund. Next year I'll do a better job. I will. I will do a better job in terms of being more conservative in the numbers presented to you in those outlying years. I will do that in respect to you and to some of the things that I've learned through this process. I truly want to enhance your comfort level in those years to come. I do want to talk about communication a bit. I've mentioned this before, and I am trying truly hard to communicate as much as I can with you good men and you good women. I do believe there is great value in communication between not only the mayor's office, but the city council, the department heads, along with the people of Sioux Falls. I'm going to strive to do it even more. Obviously, the process hasn't been perfect, even though I've tried. But obviously there's more work that can be done, and I will work in that effort. Also, I wanted to talk to the people of Sioux Falls. Obviously, there's been a trend in terms of some of the discussion amongst the city councilors, and I commend them for it. The council is definitely concerned about public safety, and they should be. I am too. And in fact, I think you heard during my campaign, and you certainly heard during my budget address, in my mind, if there's one major factor when you are evaluating someone's quality of life in a city, it is whether that family or whether you feel safe each night. You folks definitely want the people of Sioux Falls and their families to feel safe. I will assure you, we will never sacrifice safety in the spirit of saving a few bucks. You won't allow it. I won't allow it. Chief Hill, Chief Barthel, other departments won't allow it, and the people of Sioux Falls won't as well. There was a recent meeting that went well on to into the later hours of the night that you city councilors spent your time and talents at. And at that meeting, Councilor Entenmann asked a question of Chief Barthel, and I think I've got it down, but it was, do you feel comfortable where you are at today, and as the need arises, will you tell us? I thought that was a great question of Councilor Entenmann, and I respect him for having the guts to do that. Chief Barthel answered, I am extremely comfortable with where we are at today and into 2011. Again, in the spirit of questioning, probing, making sure that the man ultimately responsible for a majority of the public safety, Chief Barthel, Councilor Entenmann wanted to know, face-to-face, man-to-man, eye-to-eye, what Chief Barthel felt. And I think Chief Barthel relayed that to you and to others on other occasions. To the people of Sioux Falls, I want to let you know your city council they're definitely probing, and they're asking good questions. And I do respect that. I'll tell you, tough questioning by the city council doesn't automatically mean conflict. And it doesn't mean that it's running rampant, as some headlines want us to believe. It's part of the process. It makes government stronger. And it maximizes our taxpayer dollar. And it definitely does ensure a good balance between the different levels of government. one of the safeguards within the budgeting process that we have within our city government here in Sioux Falls is that I do have the ability to come back to you good men and women if the need arises and ask for more money. I hope I don't have to do that, but if I do, I will come back, and then you will have the opportunity to say yes or no on behalf of the citizens of Sioux Falls. Another quote by Thomas Edison, restlessness and discontent are the first necessities of progress. You know, we're not always going to agree. I also mentioned that during my campaign, and I know you're sick and tired of hearing of it during my time here as mayor. We're not always going to agree, but I feel strongly that this city council, and yes, this mayor, if we infuse some common sense, some compromise, we will ultimately find common ground on the things that we do. And ultimately, progress will occur, and yes, Sioux Falls will move forward. There's a Special Olympics oath, and I am a big fan of Special Olympics. I had spent a lot of time working with the good folks there. There's a quote, "Let me win, but if I cannot win, let me be brave in the attempt." You know, on my computer in my office, and you're all welcome to see it, there's a little sticky note that I put on my computer. And it's some of the things that I heard when I first got here into city government, and that was, we've never done it that way, or we've always done it this way. I believe there's just so much opportunity ahead, but I do believe that you do have to challenge the status quo and even make some mistakes along the way to reach your full potential. We did challenge the department heads at a higher level this year when it came time to this budget. We had to have them scrutinize even more, yes, because of some of the challenging economic conditions that we're currently facing. But I thought it was interesting is that early on in 2010, before four of us were elected, and including before I was elected, there were holdbacks that were implemented by Mayor Munson and with the help of all of his department heads. They basically made each department cut back on their expenses by 15%. They did it. And I'm proud to say I think city government remains very strong. They spent the dollars on operations, capital, and people based on the wishes of the Sioux Falls residents. One of the things that I found curious, and again, I'm learning through this process, I really am, but I was trying to figure out, I wonder what would have happened in the 2009 budgeting process if Mayor Munson and his department heads and Gene Rowenhorst would have come to the city council back in 2009 and had recommended the 15% worth of financial cuts that were made in each department. I wonder how that process would have gone. I know it would have been tough. I know there would have been good probing questions. Yes, there probably would have been some headlines that made some people nervous along the way. But the interesting thing, I believe, is that they made those 15% cuts in the spirit of doing what ultimately was right for the people of Sioux Falls. They did it, and our city does remain strong. They made the attempt to reduce the spending in city government by 15%, a pretty monumental figure on a budget that was ultimately approved by the city council and the mayor at that time. I believe Sioux Falls came out the winner because of it. I made this comment during my budget address to you good people, and that was that I wanted to build confidence and trust so that we could come back someday and garner support for worthy investments that will make Sioux Falls proud for generations to come. It's no secret, and you knew probably what it was even back then. The investment I'd like you and the city to consider is a new events center. The reason I met with all of you prior to discussing our vision for this critical investment is that I didn't want it to be my vision. I was hoping it would be our vision. And yes, ultimately, the city's vision. $500,000 is indeed a large amount of money. I don't want to minimize that. I don't. $500,000 is a lot of money. However, as Mark just talked about, this is 0.5% of the proposed $99.5 million new facility that we're talking about. There's definitely going to be more scrutiny ahead, more analysis, and yes, debate to come before we can move forward. But this investment of $500,000 will help us find more answers and to ultimately develop a better roadmap before proceeding. I know in your hearts and in your heads you do want this ultimately to be successful. Some of you have voted for things like this in the past, and some of you campaigned positively on things like this in the past. Doesn't mean you have to do it again. Doesn't. It doesn't. And I'm not saying that you have to. But it is important to the future of our city. I don't believe there's a more perfect time. We're never going to find the more perfect time. I do believe, though, that the time is now. And I do thank you for your consideration and, yes, ultimately, your scrutiny. This is my favorite quote. And I use it all the time. I didn't know when I was going to use it with you good folks, but I thought I'll do it now because I've learned again from all of you during this process. And here it is. It's by Theodore Roosevelt. The credit belongs to those people who are actually in the arena, who know the great enthusiasm, the great devotions to a worthy cause, who at best know the triumph of high achievements, and who at worst fail while daring greatly, so that their place shall never be with those cold and timid souls who know neither victory nor defeat. This city council and these department heads and their teams, they have toiled many hours in this process. I've come to realize that. It starts around Valentine's Day, and ultimately it ends around Halloween. I never expected that. I didn't expect it would go on this long, but I respect it. But I never knew that was going to happen. I've seen the hours that you folks have toiled over this budget. I've seen the hours that our department heads in the city government have scrutinized and toiled over this budget as well. Sioux Falls, you're getting your money's worth. You are. But it's more than just money. I do believe all of you do care. I've seen it. You want to do the right thing for all of Sioux Falls. I witnessed your sacrifice. I've seen you infuse your time and your talent into this process. And yes, there will, and there has been, and there will continue to be honest disagreement amongst the 9 of us. But in the end, these leaders will ultimately change things for the better in Sioux Falls. And we will capture the progress and the opportunities it so deserves. Thanks for the opportunity, City Council. Thank you.
Any questions for the mayor on his comments? Mayor, I have one, or two maybe, unless the body decides to chime in. On the event center plan, in the end, at the public vote, if we learn that the public says no, what will we have learned?
I think that that's a great thing to learn, and to know where the public stands on such a critical investment for our city. We've been talking about this as a city at least probably 12 years, and some would even say 15 years. But ultimately, we've never actually brought it to that critical stage of a vote. And as I've mentioned to you folks before, I don't think it's my decision to build an event center, and ultimately, I don't think it's probably our decision to build an event center. I ultimately do believe it's the city's decision whether to proceed or not. It's ultimately, we represent them. They elect us to do that, but ultimately it's their decision. We'll learn so much, and ultimately, I've talked to you about polls, and I've talked to you about things like that, but ultimately, the rubber meets the road when you ultimately have a vote, and I do believe that we need to do that. However, I think it's also really, really critical that you bring them a plan that is truly one that you've put forth the time and the effort and indeed invested some of those critical funds to make as solid as you possibly can. Because I think the citizens of Sioux Falls are going to demand it. What we've learned in past elections is that if you just try to, I don't want to say put wool over their eyes, they're going to bite back. I want to present a plan, and I think all of us do as well, that is one that answers those tough questions. For example, how will we pay for it? What will be the impact on our debt service? Where is the best location, and how will it ultimately sit on the site? How do we deal with parking and things like that? So, Councilor Jameson, I think that we'll learn a tremendous amount, and I think that ultimately the people of Sioux Falls are ready for that.
But won't the election just essentially say, do you support the proposed plan or not? Yes or no?
Well, it'll determine whether a majority of people want to support the proposed plan, yes or no.
But if it fails, and that's what I'm getting at, is if it fails, you'll know only that they don't support that plan, and you will have spent $500,000 learning that.
Yeah, but Councilor Jameson, I don't look at...
Mayor, wouldn't it be better to spend $500,000 to know exactly what they want? Meaning, do they want 12,000 seats? Do they want 15? Do they want it out by the arena? Do they want it downtown? Do they want to borrow the money? Or do they want to raise a tax to pay for it? Or some other method of funding it? But it seems to me spending $500,000 to know all those answers would be far better than to later only find out that they voted no because they didn't like part of the plan or half the plan, but they voted it down, and we're sitting here wondering now what part of it didn't they like?
See, and Councilor Jameson, we will probably have to respectfully disagree here on a couple of things. First of all, I'm not going into this believing that they're going to vote no. I'm looking at this with positiveness, with a vision that the people of Sioux Falls ultimately want to move this city forward. So I'm going to respectfully disagree there in terms of, I'm not going to put no into my head right now. I'd rather look at it as representing the people who want to move this thing forward in the spirit of representing them. We certainly have to take into consideration the minority, if that is indeed the case, if it's a yes vote. But I'm more concerned on representing the people that I believe want to move this city forward, and I do believe that is the majority. And then I think that one of the things that we talked about in the meetings that we held last week, Councilor Jameson, along with the other city council members, and maybe I should have brought that slide with me today. I think that if there's one thing we can all agree on, we're never going to get everybody to agree on all the aspects of this plan. Never. You'll never get there. You can spend $10 million and you're still not going to have everybody agree on every aspect of this plan. You're just not. Because there's so many variables that are involved in it. There are. So this $500,000 is an investment that we do on other things as well. When we built the library, for example, we didn't have everybody agree on every aspect of that library. But we did spend some seed money in the spirit of getting the schematics done, determining what it would look like, how many people it would serve, and some of those things, and then ultimately we move forward. The same thing will apply here. The greatest difference, though, here, to be fair to you, Councilor Jameson, is that because this is such a large investment for our town, that $500,000 sticks out more. It does. And I respect you for that, Councilor Jameson, for scrutinizing it even more. This is a $100 million facility, potentially. And in fact, as you good folks know, there were some numbers that we talked about last year as high as 100, I want to say 65 or 167. That's why this one sticks out more. And again, I respect you for scrutinizing that dollar. But again, I believe that we are ready to move forward. I believe the people of Sioux Falls ultimately are ready to move forward. And I believe that the investment will teach us so much in terms of listening, learning to the people, listening and learning from the experts, putting some real meat on the bone, and then ultimately providing a voting opportunity so that the people of Sioux Falls can ultimately speak their mind one way or the other.
Councilor Entman.
Yeah. Councilor Jameson and fellow city council people, as all of you know, I've served on 2 different task forces. We have spent hours and hours on the event center, a rec center possibility, all those kinds of things, trying to identify needs. We've taken hours of testimony from citizens, all different groups, all ages, and we try to work to ensure that we were touching everybody that's out there. We have talked about it. We have identified a need as a community based on a lot of the information that we have received and the reports that we've actually submitted to the City Council in all of those different occasions. And I must agree with the next step that the Mayor has put forward here. I believe it is a logical process, looking at a construction process as you go forward. We continue to, he's going to continue to seek out community input, as was stated in the presentation that we had. And I personally like the way the vision has been narrowed from trying to identify and capture all the needs by identifying a rec center needs as well as an event center needs and everything that goes with it. I like the way the vision has been narrowed to concentrate just on an event center and identify that was what was needed in there. And his request for the $500,000 for the next part of the process, I believe that needs to be the city that takes that next step. And then from there, hopefully, we'll go out and we're going to garner the support of the community and as well as opportunities for investments in this thing from citizens out there. And I can guarantee you, and I am committed, that this process be followed through. And I think it's key as we look to the future. I believe at the same time we're doing this, we're still going to be able to identify and take care of the needs of our citizens as we go forward here, the immediate needs. But we do have to have this vision and look at where we're going to be in 50 years from now.
I just have to respond a little bit that I believe during the last task force that it was determined that the city would receive roughly $52 million of economic impact if that plan was adopted and if that project was built. 70% of that revenue was going to come from the convention center business. And here we are, not expanding the convention center business at all. And like I said before, I believe we've got the cart ahead of the horse. The convention center is the horse in this matter. And I think what I voted on last time on supporting that task force recommendation is different now. And I guess I'm just concerned that the event center has all the sizzle, has all the excitement about it, but we're forgetting about the workhorse here, and that is the convention center. And adding the convention center and the event center out to the existing facility does make sense because it's the least expensive way to do it. But long term, I think we're missing the boat. My opinion, we're missing the boat because what we should consider, and I believe the only thing we should consider is where is the long-term economic impact going to occur and how is it going to occur. We can all go to Sioux City or Omaha to go to an event center. That'd be no big deal. You don't have to spend $100 million to go to a concert. But we need to think about the economic impact to our city. That's it. And I believe that the convention center is where that happens. And I just happen to believe that having that in a location like downtown is where it should occur. It's not about making it easy, because if it was easy, it would have done it a long time ago. It's about doing it right. And that's part of the problem I have with this whole concept, is we're going to spend $500,000 to try to make sure that it works out at the event center or the current arena site. And after that, nothing else matters. It doesn't matter about where the greatest economic impact could occur. It's just getting it done. That's the only thing you're going to worry about. The only thing you're going to focus on. It's the only thing you're going to sell using that $500,000. And I just think we're missing the big picture.
Councilor Jameson, if I may just respond, the 2 hours that we spent last week wasn't done in the spirit of being easy or hitting the easy button. You saw in there all the level of detail that we went through in the spirit of ultimately capturing an opportunity for Sioux Falls. But also, number two, the questions that you just brought up that need to be answered. Actually, I don't know if you Mark Cotter in his presentation on the second, or actually it was the third slide, that's actually what these questions, this investment will also pay for, is the economic development opportunity. It was, I think, bullet 2 or 3 in his presentation. So this investment of $500,000 will ultimately help answer that question that you so justly deserve. That's why we need to invest the $500,000. And then last but not least, the convention center floor space, as we talked about last week, will be enhanced because the additional flat floor space that's provided by the new facility.
Any other questions? All right, Mayor, thank you.
Thank you very much, Councilor Jameson, and thank you, City Council.
Okay, let's move on to our next item, which would be committee reports, starting with the Audit Committee. No report. Moving to the Fiscal Committee. Councilor Brown.
We are meeting right after this finishes here in the council chambers. The agenda is on the back of your informational agenda. We're covering draft ordinance regarding budget transfers, Audit Committee member ordinance, and then we'll review the request to create the tax increment district number 10, which is the CNA surety tax increment financing district on the old Shoneman site.
Any questions for Councilor Brown? Okay, seeing none, we'll go to Land Use.
No report, Mr. Chair.
Public Services Committee.
No report.
City Council open discussion. Any items anybody like to talk about? Questions, comments, thoughts? All right, well, I'll add a couple. Just don't forget about tomorrow's 5 o'clock meeting here. 4 o'clock? 4 o'clock. See? That's why we have things like this, and so we get it right. 4 o'clock. Don't be late. Right here. And of course, tonight, item 15 and 16 is a complicated issue. I want to make sure everybody has a chance to ask questions or, beforehand, visit with the city attorneys, our chief city clerk, or contact anybody you might need to, but it's a complicated issue. I hope you all have a chance to review all those notes that we've received lately and are ready to go. Councilor Intiman.
Just I keep reminding myself of Dee Knutson when she sat in this chair and how she always liked to remind the community of some of the different events that are going on. And I'd just be remiss if I didn't remind people that Sidewalk Arts Festival is this weekend. There's a lot of stuff going on Saturday. The President's Bowl is going on also, along with German Fest. So there's a lot of cool stuff going on, and hope people get out and enjoy the city.
Jim Intiman, the new Dee Knutson. Okay, how about, does everybody know the dates for the rest of the budget adoption process? Are they all familiar with that? You guys good? Any questions about that? Seeing none. I think that's it, at least for me. Anybody else? Councilor Intiman? Do you have something? Okay, very good. This meeting is adjourned.